Hey there, Squirrel Army. How's it going? Today, I want to talk about Tribute to the World Tree. Some +1 counters shenanigans.
You can join the Squirrel Army by subscribing.
Alright, so this is a tri-green enchantment. So you have to be heavy green when you're playing this, or mono green, I would think, though. I'm still kind of thinking about putting this in my +1 counters deck, because if I don't draw a card, I get 2 counters on my creature. So that's really strong, especially with all the you get additional counters or you get double counters, etc. That sort of an effect. It is going to be tough to sort of cut something from that deck, but still, it does two really good things to a degree. Because like when you play something that has power 3 or greater, a lot of those creatures don't have haste. And the problem with them is that, like, they might be really good, but they really take a turn or two to generate decent enough value for you to have cast them, like Vorinclex and things like that. So, especially with, like, if I had Vorinclex, but Vorinclex does have haste, so, but whatever. Like, a lot of those cards that are 6 and 7 and whatnot are a lot harder to cast in that regard if you don't get some kind of payoff for them. And drawing a card for playing them is pretty darn good. So, it's kind of like Garruk's Uprising or something like that. It's hard to actually point at something specific with this and say it's like this, but it does care about things being greater than 3. Actually, yeah, it's a lot like Elemental Bond. Actually, it's pretty much an upgraded Elemental Bond, except that it's tri-green instead of being 2 and a green. So, and it gives you counters if your creature's not bigger than 3. So, there's that. I think, like, it could be good in some token decks as well, because, like, even though you might not draw a lot of cards from this thing, you know, and your creature's being big enough, maybe sometimes you will, but when you have smaller creatures, just being able to buff them all up by +2 seems really, really strong. Even in my Chatterfang deck, I might have to think about trying to find space for this, because, again, that deck's very heavy green anyway, and getting 2 counters on my creatures versus... I think the one thing that I would think that this is most similar to in that deck is the Sylvan Anthem, because I think that's 2 or 3 mana. I'm not too sure now, but it gives green creatures +1, and when a green creature enters, you scry 1. So, like with that deck, you can scry a whole bunch, but that's not really that useful if you're making a lot of tokens. But again, it's not often that useful, and I often just forget that it's an actual thing and just, like, yeah, whatever. I don't care. It's not big enough for me to care about. And the +1/+1 is nice, but +2/+2 would be better, and just drawing a card when something 3 or greater enters is pretty darn good. So I would think that that does fit in that deck pretty well. In my +1 counters, it probably fits in that pretty well as well. Like I sort of said, I was thinking about putting it in there. In any +1 counters deck, I think it's good because it gives you those counters when you need it on your smaller stuff, and on your bigger stuff, it gets you an additional card. So it helps you replace those things that are harder to replace again, so that's good. And in some other token decks, I think it could be really good. Even in, like, just a replacement for Elemental Bond, I think that that's a really good, like, swap. Like, this is going to be a fairly cheap rare for the most part, because it's not that amazing. Yeah, sure, it's pretty good, but it's not that amazing. It's not gonna burn the world down. It's just good value for, some casual decks and whatnot. So that's all right. It's not needing to be anything else. It's fine as what it is because it will help or even add to decks that might need this. People will always have that problem going, man, I never have enough card draw or I never have enough power on my board. So just adding this to almost any deck could be, well, useful at least. The problem becomes that this is 3 green. So you've really got to be green focused or you've got to be mono green, I feel. So that's where this is a slight problem for some decks, but for other decks it would be absolutely great. Like in a 2-color deck, I still think that this is fine, especially if you're heavy green, though it is tough to say that it's always going to work out. But I do think that it can work out pretty well. It might not be the best thing, but it's still really good. So that's what I think. You guys, as always, can let me know your thoughts down there in the comments below. And yeah, hope you've enjoyed this one and hope you will join me again for another one.